And welcome to tonight's Sunday Night SitDown. I am your co-host, Kahari Mosley, here with my illustrious colleague, Ryan White. Miracle will not be joining us this Sunday evening. She is taking the night off. But welcome. We have another great conversation for our Sunday Night SitDown. Thanks to everyone who's been joining us as we rolled out this new program on the One Hood Powers Network, and thank you for everyone who continues to join us on Monday nights for the One Hood Power Hour. So before we go into our guest, is there any quick takes that you have, Ryan? So much going on. This week we've seen the infrastructure bill actually move through the Senate with 67 votes, including Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, which I thought was pretty notable, as well as the kind of love fest that the moderate Republicans and Democrats had on Capitol Hill earlier this week with Senator Portman and Senator from Arizona, Kristen Sinema, as well as Joe Manchin and Lisa Murkowski from Alaska. So any quick feedback on this? At least what it seems to be in the United States Senate, a lot of support for a bipartisan infrastructure bill. It looks like it's going to be a different story when it gets to the House of Representatives, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, it passed with pretty bipartisan support in the Senate. Including even McConnell, which I think is a little bit surprising and maybe even a little bit foreboding if it really got cut back that much that even he was willing to vote for it. I believe. The bill that passed in the Senate was for about, somewhere in the range of $500 billion, which was, 20 to 25% of the initial proposal that Biden put forth. So, obviously that is a pretty staunch reduction from the original plan, cutbacks in a lot of different areas, I'm sure. But, it's something that's, really, really urgently needed in, a ton of areas, whether it be, physical infrastructure, just investment in a lot of different areas that would be covered in the plan, workforce development, etc. So even to just get obviously it's reduced, it's a compromise from the original plan, but just to get any substantial injection of funding and of programs and allocation of resources to those areas is going to be really, really foundationally crucial to a lot of areas in Pittsburgh and nationwide, including Braddock Hills, the community that we'll be talking to one of the candidates for their council for tonight. So I'm sure, we'll touch on that briefly as well. But, it'll be interesting to see, what finalized version of that is able to pass both houses, what the end result of that will be. So, I'm just excited to get in that discussion with our guest tonight, talking about, a whole wide range of issues, from her background and also just impacting Braddock Hills, like that infrastructure bill. So, I'm excited to get into that tonight.
No, absolutely. And just one other thing that I wanted to add is that, there's definitely a growing chorus of rumors that, as been expected for a number of months now, Congressman Connor Lamb is expected to announce his candidacy for the United States Senate sometime next week. I don't know if there's any additional details or even if it's officially confirmed, but the expectation is that Connor Lamb is going to, jump into the race. And we've, talked to Malcolm Kenyatta and John Fetterman and Sharif Street, Val Arkush from, I believe, is a Montgomery County commissioner, is also in the race as well. And so it's going to be fascinating to see how that continues to play out and how Connor Lamb's candidacy will change or not change the Senate race for 2022 in Pennsylvania, which is going to be very closely watched, from around the country. And we both know that, Sharif Street as well as Malcolm Kenyatta, recently in the Pittsburgh area, for events. And Senator Shreve had a non-campaign related event with One Hood Power, some other organizations, talking specifically about addressing mass incarceration as well as gun violence and criminal justice reform. So without any further ado, Ron, you want to talk a little bit about tonight's guest for the Sunday Night Sit Down, as well as who it is and why they're going to be on the show and what specific issues we'll be talking about tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Kahari. So tonight we'll be joined by Annette Nance, who is running for the Braddock Hills Borough Council. Like our esteemed colleague Miracle Jones, she got her MSW, Master's in Social Work, from the University of Pittsburgh. Prior to that, she's a veteran of the U.S. Marine Corps, and she was, really involved in leadership positions with veterans during her time at Pitt. Since getting her MSW, she's now working, in a few different capacities for a lot of different organizations in a professional development capacity, and is also involved in a statewide commission as appointed by Governor Tom Wolf. The main focus of what we'll be talking about tonight is her decision and announcement that she'll be running for the Braddock Hills Borough Council in these upcoming elections. So we're just going to talk to her about, her background, what motivated her to run for that, what experiences she has, what some of those main issues and priorities that she has for Braddock Hills are. So, really excited to get into that tonight.
Absolutely. So we're very excited to have Annette Vance, candidate for Braddock Hills Council, joining us tonight on the Sunday Night Sit Down. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you for having me. How are you all?
Doing great, doing great. Before we go into our more specific questions, and after this one, we'll go to Ryan. Just what has it been like being on the campaign trail? Is this your first endeavor into elected politics?
Yes, and it is. It's colorful. I'll tell you that. There's a lot that you don't know and you learn along the way, especially when it comes to like getting your petition signed and things like that. Just getting on the ballot, and then also learning that some folks are like, oh, well, you don't really need to do that. Just, it's a small borough, so just be outside and people can write your name in. And I'm just like, oh, that doesn't sound effective or productive. So I'm not going to go that route. But I have learned a lot about the community in itself, and getting to know those who are the leaders in their roles, and just really my biggest thing is trying to understand like where the data is, so we can really make some data informed decisions, especially coming from my background. Pitt is all about data and everything. So if we don't have the data, we can't make strong decisions, and even talking to folks as well to kind of not repeat what's already been done.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And just, kind of piggybacking off of that, if you could just talk about a little bit about, what really inspired you to run, what your motivations are, whether it be things from your background and experiences that influenced you, or, specific issues and opportunities that you see in Braddock Hills that, you think your position on the council would be beneficial in working towards.
Yeah. So I actually had one of the members who is on the Braddock Hills Borough Council is the one who reached out to me and said, we have a seat that's going to be open, and I think you'd be perfect for it. And I was like, I have to do my homework first, because I'm from the South, so we don't really talk about boroughs. There's counties and things of that nature. So it really took me quite some time to really understand the structure. And so when I thought about all the community work that I've been doing on the West End, and the things that I've been doing, serving on different boards in that capacity, and really getting to know Pittsburgh, I felt as if though it would definitely be in my best interest to, try this side of the world in politics, and really trying to get to know what the structure is like, the folks are, what they actually want to happen. And the biggest thing is the community is really excited for change. Because what I've seen is that most of the borough is comprised of a lot of older folks who, have certain way of thinking. And so I think this new perspective that I have to bring with my experience of, being in the military and my social work background will really help to kind of bring about some change and bring about some resources. So I'm excited for that.
Well, thank you for that. Can you talk a little bit about how do you feel as though your military experience could be an asset as a candidate as well as an elected official?
I think when it comes to structure, so prior to when I joined the military, I was 18, 19 years old. I can only speak for myself. I know 18, 19 don't have a lot of common sense there. You think you do, you think you know everything and that you're grown. And when I look back now, I'm just like, okay, what did 18, 19-year-old Annette need to know? And, now I'm 29. And so there's a lot that I've learned along the way with structure and discipline. That's my biggest thing is I want to be able to put things in place that are concrete and not kind of run like a small town in a sense of, well, everyone should know these XYZ things versus where is it written down at? How long has, maybe this policy or these rules been in place? And for certain things, I wonder, is it just, it just keeps operating like a small town. And if you have, you want newer, younger families or people to move into this borough to keep it alive, you need to really be able to be as open and honest with the residents and as open and honest with, people outside of the borough as well. Because before we moved to this borough, I didn't even know it existed. And once I started to kind of, we were looking for a home. This is where we found a home. And if you know anything about shopping for a home in Pittsburgh, if you can find one with a driveway and more than one bathroom, you are like in luck and not a Pittsburgh potty. No offense to that, but just really thinking about the things that you want in a home and being in the area, I was like, where are the younger families and things like that? Because I also have a younger son. And I was like, well, what resources are here? And I think that comes with a lot of, the time and things getting better. If you go to a new neighborhood now, you're going to look it up online and thinking about, what businesses are here, what resources are here, where are things at? And I know with this borough, there's a lot of life here, but it's a time for an upgrade as well.
Yeah, thanks for that. And so, just to follow up on your closing thought there, that there's already a lot going on in Braddock Hills and the greater area over there in the Mon Valley, but that this is still time for an upgrade. Do you see any, any specific opportunities for that, economic investment that, any specific industries you see growing in the area, or just any opportunities for development like that, because the region is, historically associated a lot with, steel, coal, like different, different manufacturing and industrial industries like that. But, obviously because of environmental concerns and a number of other things, that's declining in the area. And so, you kind of have this pro con of like, yeah, that's really important for the environmental concerns, but, that also creates kind of a gap in jobs and employment there. So do you see, any real opportunities to bring in that investment, bring in that job creation, bring in that development?
Yeah, definitely. There is a like this, probably one of the bigger areas, a shopping center that has schools in there, restaurants, a grocery store, and things like that. I know there are new businesses that are coming to the area, which is great. That's providing jobs. That's for helping small businesses really grow. And I think that is really the big thing that's important for small businesses to continue to grow, new businesses, new mom and pop type businesses that we haven't seen before and not necessarily your chains. And then when we think about, what does it look like for the land here? Because I have driven around the borough and there are a lot of homes which could be rehabbed or a lot of land which could be utilized for things for the community for us to be able to, use it in a more effective way so that things don't just sit and become dilapidated houses. So I think really looking at a bigger plan of how much the borough has to offer and really working with elected officials and not just, with amongst ourselves. I think really reaching out into the other boroughs and trying to understand their plans as well and working together when it comes to those things.
And so, just as a quick follow up to that, and then I'll pass it back to you, Kahari. But you kind of alluded to this already, talking about the need to bring in a lot more mom and pop shops run by local residents rather than chains and things along those lines. But with a lot of concerns, valid concerns really in the area and in a lot of cities around gentrification impacting the affordability and the sustainability for people who already live in those areas. How do you kind of balance that need for investment, that need for development, while still making sure that the main benefactors of it are the people who are already in the community, who get to benefit from that development occurring?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is going to be the community's voice, right? Like, you don't start off with this kind of development and just say, well, I'm going to do it because I think it's great. And this is where I think it's going to be really important. And what I've been trying to do in the little things here and there is, I asked residents, what is it that you think would be better? Folks are like, we would like recycling to come back. From past folks I've talked to, they're just kind of like, well, we don't really need recycling because it's too expensive. And it's like, well, we need to kind of start to look at the bigger picture. So what is the bigger picture when we start to think about these mom and pop businesses? Where can they go? Because there are areas and opportunities, there's land, there's buildings that are vacant here. Why are they vacant? Is it because, folks are not familiar with the borough, or is it because folks don't want to come over here? But I think it really provides, for a great location for businesses. It's literally like less than 10 miles from from downtown. Parking is free. So I know that is a really big thing for some folks, but really utilizing methods to listen to the community voices, bring them in on the decisions. If that's forming an advisory board, if that's really being hands-on with it, I'm definitely open to that. I want to include the residents of the borough with these decisions, because I think in the past it has been, well, we'll just do what we think it was versus let's take in more voices. Let's have them, let's provide an accessible way for us to hear their voices. If that means having a Zoom meeting, because there are some boroughs, and Braddock Hills does not do their meetings via Zoom. They do them via like teleconference, and that may not be effective. So we need to think of new ways to really implement voices.
Thank you. Now, most people in the greater, Pittsburgh area, and probably more so even around the state, are very, familiar, with the neighboring borough of Braddock, due to, John Fetterman, Summer Lee, Mayor Jones, have been very, high profile. So I know with most folks, between Braddock, North Braddock, Braddock Hills, it gets kind of confusing. So what are some, the distinguishing features, of Braddock Hills, that makes it different from Braddock and North Braddock? And, even me as someone who's lived in the Pittsburgh area all my life, I kind of start to get confused, when I get to that area of the county. It's like, I'm on Braddock, North Braddock, Braddock Hills. What's the difference? What are some of the, the issues, that may differ in Braddock Hills versus, and I think, due to, again, with John Fetterman and the Levi's, advertising campaign, Braddock has, have become, known all over the country, so what should we know, about Braddock Hills that we may not know about, as far as folks from the greater Pittsburgh area that you would like to tell us?
So I think the first thing that I noticed myself was the demographic. When I was kind of going door to door, COVID safe with my mask and everything, I knocked on more doors of white residents than I did of residents of color. I also saw the difference in probably from when I've talked to folks on the borough as well, is that there's also a difference in economic status. But it's kind of hard to start to really realize who is, the big differences, like on paper. So it's more of like as you see them, because we also share a zip code. We're not, by ourselves. We share a zip code with, I believe, Church Hill, and a little bit of like, because it kind of goes into Wilkinsburg as well. So it's really hard to say like a difference. But I think just on face value, you may see there are a lot of buildings that, I don't want to say they're abandoned, but there are buildings and structures who could use a little bit more love in the borough. But then it's also, from what I've seen community wise, they're very people will tell me the history. They know who used to live in the house that I currently own, and there used to be a pool here, like that community. When I've been to some Braddock events, I've seen that there are more people of color. So I will say that's the biggest difference that I've noticed. But I think there's opportunity for all of us to come together, because at one point, most of these boroughs used to be connected. And then over time, they started to separate. And then we know the school district and so forth and so on. So I think we need to act more like neighbors. And I would love to connect with Braddock, North Braddock, and so forth and so on, because at the end of the day, we're trying to move forward to something better for the next generation and not just ourselves. Because I know that when my child is old enough to, make the decision, do I stay here or do I leave? I would like them to be like, this is the home that I'd like to stay in because of these resources, or, thinking about memories. We used to have maybe a community day or a family day or so forth and so on. And so I think like it's kind of hard to pinpoint a lot of differences, but I do see more activism and things like that on face value in the other areas more so than I see in Braddock Hills, probably because the residents are also a little bit older.
Thank you for that. And another thing I did want to ask you about. So Braddock Hills Borough Council would be your first elected public office, but it wouldn't be your first, like quasi-governmental role. Recently, Governor Wolf selected you as commissioner for his advisory commission on African American affairs. So I just wanted to give you the opportunity to talk about that a little bit. What sort of things you're working on in the commission, what that leadership role looks like as commissioner, and how working in that, it, obviously not the same thing as an elected office, but working in that type of governmental advisory role would help prepare you for a position like this.
I will say the first thing, it's a lot of reading. It's a lot of reading from working with the transportation department and thinking about ways to make things more accessible. And especially when we start to think of language, how is language inclusive? What do things look like? The surveys that PennDOT has out there, their 20-something year plan. We're also having subcommittees on the commission that are related to economic development. Also thinking about what does that look like for folks when we think about gun violence and these different policies that are affecting the African American community within Pennsylvania. So way bigger than just, looking at Pittsburgh or Allegheny County, but we're all working together from different walks of life and professions, because at the end of the day, we want to see African Americans in Pennsylvania thrive and utilize their resources and knowledge and, utilize our experiences. And so a lot of it is looking into the policies, what is there, making the concise decision together about what will work and what will not work. Sometimes it's a lot of just really being honest, and you'll read something and you're just like, this won't work. But it's also trying to understand the budget. So that's been the biggest thing for me, is I didn't grow up doing any of the things that I'm doing. So the seeing any folks doing the things I'm doing. So the commission is something new for me, but it has allowed me to see what's going on with the budget and understanding, things related to education and how the funds are being distributed there, or special education, or even recently one of the things that we were told about and kind of reading up on was how the homeless are able to get IDs now, and the process that they have to go through that, because not a lot of states are, give the homeless IDs, or even just the process of even being able to walk into the DMV and still get that. But there are different processes that go along with that.
Well, thank you so much for that. And on the campaign trail, like what is the feedback that you get from voters? What are they concerned about? When you talk to them on the doors.
So they are concerned about diversity. So they want to see a more diverse borough council. They want to see folks do work and not just fulfill these roles for 30 plus years. from when I've talked to other folks who are running for different borough councils, they've told me, so-and-so's, this person has been there for 40 years. And, if you've been there for that long, why don't the residents know who you are? So that's one. And so I want to ensure that the residents know who I am, that they have that, when that time comes, that I will listen to whatever it is that you're trying to tell me, or and things like that. And also, like I said before, recycling has come up. They want resources for their children. There are a lot of younger families moving to the borough, and they have to go to another borough for maybe a park. There's no park here. So you go to Forest Hills, or, thinking about having events in the park area, because it's not really a park, it's like a walking trail. So having events there where the borough building is, and thinking about what that looks like. Myself and a current borough council member, we had an event where we brought Grow Pittsburgh into the event, and then we also gave out free ice cream. So that was a resource there where folks started to learn about Grow Pittsburgh and the initiatives and work that they're doing with, teaching kids how to grow vegetables, and they were able to get their own plants, grow it at home, and have, different vegetables and things like that. And it was amazing to see so many residents come out. Even, in April, when things were, still kind of touch and go, but everything was outside, we had over 70 residents come through. And I only know those numbers because that's how much ice cream went out. And so it was a really great event. And, the residents were like, when are you going to do the next one? And I was like, oh my goodness, the pressure. I was like, what will we do next? But then also, residents are wondering what are going on with buildings that haven't been used. They're also wondering, how can you make the meetings more accessible for them to be able to participate? Because if you just do everything on the phone, literally, you don't know, who's going to go next and talking and speaking and things like that. And even if the minutes are put on the website, that sometimes for some folks are like, I'd rather, come into the Zoom world. That's more helpful for me, or even a Facebook Live, like many other organizations are doing. So I think that is where we need to really move in technology as a borough to really be able to reach more people, because they're asking for it. Folks talk to me as if I'm already on the borough, and I'm just like, no, not just yet, but I can pass the message on. And also they have kind of put it out there about there are some seniors who are kind of in need of food. So that food insecurity, what does that look like in the area that is the suburb, but you still know there's seniors who need assistance. So I've utilized being on the commission and spoken to some of the folks who do work with the Pittsburgh Food Bank and how we can get senior food boxes to this neighborhood. I really want to be able to probably get like volunteers. What does that look like? Because there are some folks who do need that, and they're not able to be mobile to get out there and do those things. So that's been some of the things. And folks are just they're just wanting to do stuff. We have a senior center, a building that hasn't been used even prior to the pandemic. It was probably used for small events, but with an area with so many seniors, there should be like a senior events calendar type of thing. And I think that maybe was some type of thing maybe 20 years ago, but from what I've seen in the almost 5 years living here, I haven't seen it kind of being an events thing. And there are seniors who reached, because I gave him my phone number on my when I was going door to door, and a gentleman called me and told me he built his home and he's been living there since, I believe he said maybe 1950 something. And he was just talking about how, he's seen the change in the borough, and that he wished there was more events like that so he can meet more people, because most of his family has passed on and his wife has passed on. So I've met a lot of borough residents who will love to talk to me for quite some time about, what's going on in the borough, and just that, they have lost their loved ones. So what activities is there for them to do, especially when we think of the pandemic and how it's kind of isolated some folks. If you weren't used to getting on the internet and things like that, what other activities are there for seniors who may not be tech savvy?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. Yeah, I think you just answered like three of the other questions I had related to, community engagement, how you would engage your constituents, things like that. So it seems like, that's definitely a core principle and foundation of, of your campaign, of your, plans to run for and, hopefully get elected to that borough council seat. So, I would just like to know how you think, two questions, I guess, how you think your background in social work, going to the Pitt School for Social Work and getting your master's there, really informed your focus and your strategies related to that, community engagement. Because obviously, a huge central part of that is always working with people. And then also just kind of as we're kind of in a weird gray area as far as the pandemic goes, with things being more or less open at the moment, but again, with that Delta variant looming and looking like, again, as we move into the school year and the fall and winter months, like, a lot of things may be shut down again for a while or may require, additional guidelines and restrictions. How do you plan to really, adapt and adjust your ways of engaging with the community in those types of situations?
Yeah, so I definitely want to be able to make sure that we're, safe. If that means I'm going to provide you with masks and gloves and we're going to still talk through, wherever we're at, or I know when I was doing door to door, I would, make sure mask gloved up and just giving folks distance because the population is predominantly seniors. I rarely I maybe saw a few younger folks, but it wasn't too many. And even when I looked at the list of residents, I was like, okay, we're looking down the names, like who's going to actually open the door or, things like that. And so I really want to be able to have folks really adhere to what's going on and really being as safe as possible. And, also respecting people's space, because I know there's some folks who may not want to do in-person things. So I'm starting to really think about what does that strategy look like to campaign during a pandemic in an area where technology is not number one, right? Like, and you go to these other, maybe I'd say younger boroughs or younger areas or your Oakland and stuff like that. They're probably zooming everything in the world. But, here in Braddock Hills, you have to do it old school. That's a flyer, writing down what's going on, because if you send an email, who knows when it'll get opened, or maybe someone has to assist this person with that. So I want to be able to make sure that I get the information out in a concrete manner that folks have it in their hands, and then also make sure that we're adhering to, CDC guidelines, and then what's paying attention to the numbers in Allegheny County as well. So if there was an opportunity to do said event, we want to make sure that we have enough space, enough ventilation and things like that, so that we're not doing anything that is causing anyone harm. And then I forgot your first question. Sorry.
No, you're good. Yeah, thank you for being so thorough with the second question. The first question was just, how your background in social work really informed your emphasis and strategy for that community engagement.
Yes, so social work is not just about child welfare. So just want to get that out there, because I think sometimes when people hear social work, they think, oh, you're taking people's kids. Trust and believe, I'm taking no one's kids. But it's really about what is it that is going to increase the quality of life by utilizing resources, by following the social work values and really putting them into practice. And if that means really meeting someone where they are. So if someone says, they call me on the phone and just says, can you come to my door and let's have a conversation about these things that I've seen, and I will, I'll be there. It might, take me some time, but we don't have to schedule it out because, I also have a day job as well. But I also want to ensure that all the things that I've learned at Pitt School of Social Work, I bring them to everything. I bring my true self as well, and understanding that who I am is what's gotten me to this point of really having the confidence and the knowledge to be able to put all this into action.
Yeah, and I had a quick question. I know we're going to be wrapping up in the next few minutes, but I did want to just ask a question about your involvement with the Governor's Commission on the Advisory Commission on African American Affairs. Like, how did you, get involved with that, and what are some of the things that you've been able to be involved with, due to your affiliation with the Governor's Commission?
Yeah. So I had a colleague who I knew through a new through a board that I served on. And I just asked, I was like, what is it, what do you do on the governor's commission? What is it like? And so she started to tell me about another commission that she's on related to kind of things related to the police and things like that. And so I was like, so what do people do to get on a commission? Like, how does this work? And trust and believe, it's a long process. I thought it was, like a board, like how you see folks or, they send their resume and someone will be in contact with you. Well, with the commission, the executive director contacted me. We had an interview, and then I had to go through a couple of screenings. So through their team. And that means, screening the internet, things like that, making sure that I have good character and going about that. And so with the commission so far, we've reviewed plans on transportation. There's also been opportunities to tour with the Secretary of Agriculture, I believe. They recently did a PA tour with going through the different urban gardens within the county. So that opportunity came up to really get to know what work is being done locally. So places like Grow Pittsburgh, there is a garden in the hill. I can't remember the name right now, but there's a garden in Hill, and I believe there's possibly one in Braddock. And so these different areas that are doing that and educating the community on what it's like to do those things. So really getting to do those tours. And then recently we got a request to do another one related to the rivers and the land. But I wasn't able to make that one because it's about 4 hours away.
Thank you. Ron, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, sorry, and I'm sure you're getting a lot of background noise right now. Sorry about that. There's some construction going on upstairs. But I did just want to get your thoughts real quickly. Since this has been a major talking point and a bit of a source of controversy in a nearby borough, and that has to do with the potential incorporation of Wilkinsburg into the city of Pittsburgh. And since that is a bordering community, is also in the Mon Valley. I was just curious, how you feel about that scenario in general. Whether you think that's something that could be beneficial or harmful for Wilkinsburg. And then if that does happen and proves to be successful or beneficial to their residents, is that something that you could see expanding to other Mon Valley communities in the future?
I think it definitely opens up a lot of opportunities for Wilkinsburg, and we've seen how Wilkinsburg has transformed along the years when it comes to a lot of the buildings, a lot of the work that Mayor Marita Garrett has been doing with a lot of her community engagement and things like that, especially from, I think it's called, they do Fresh Fridays with their food insecurity and providing that to residents. I've also been doing similar work in the West End, and until you are, it's tired to say like boots on the ground, until you are handing a box of food to someone and hearing their story, you will not, like, there's this feeling that comes from it when they tell you about themselves, what's going on. And it's not just about food. It's not just about a box, right? So it's much deeper than that. So when you see that work going on in Wilkinsburg and you're giving those opportunities for healthy food, for, a better way of thinking and to operate in your day, that is really productive. That is life-changing. So then when you think about them merging, I think it really is going to open opportunities. The only thing I know I'm not super well versed right now is what happens with the school district, because I know that, that's kind of been a gray area for some folks. What does that look like? Or, what can and cannot happen, because we know how big and important education is. And we know what things have been going on with PPS school district and everything. So I think it'll definitely be something great to look forward to for the opportunities that'll come to the city, because Wilkinsburg is pretty big on its own. Like a borough like Braddock Hills is barely at 2,000 residents. So I know Wilkinsburg is well over that. And the residents will be able to benefit from that with the different resources that are there in that expansion.
Thank you so much for that. I had a quick question. I know it's not in your borough, but again, and on the topic of neighboring boroughs, there's been a lot of coverage in the news and a lot of activity in the Churchill area, around the Amazon distribution center. Is there going to be any impact on Braddock Hills? And is that going to be an issue that the local government in Braddock Hills will have to deal with as well?
So as of right now, I've heard residents in the borough talk about it, and it's not hitting with a lot of residents in a positive way because they're scared that their property tax is going to go up, and thinking about can I afford to stay in this area. It doesn't seem as positive as people would think for some folks. But what I think is that, for myself, I would need to definitely do more research before I speak on it in any kind of manner. But just from the little bit that I've heard, not a lot of residents in the Braddock Hills area are excited about it. They're wondering, how does it benefit them, and what are their long-term plans? Is this because there is a space that is pretty big in Braddock Hills that could operate like that, but they're wondering, what was special about Church Hill, or, how long has this plan kind of been, how long has this plan been in the runnings? Because, these plans are usually in fruition and things like that for years, but it's not until years later that the residents or whomever find out. And by that time, it's almost too late.
Right. Yeah, I know I saw something on the news this week where they were, discussing how, the potential impact, on 376 and, potential backups, particularly between, that Wilkinsburg and Monroeville exit, right, where the proposed site is. How far is that site, from Braddock Hills?
It's pretty close. So I would say guesstimating less than 10 miles, because everything is like really next to each other. When you start to think of all the boroughs, you don't really have to drive that far.
Right.
So it's also like, because it's so close, what would that do? Is that huge form of, that gentrification that will happen. And next thing you know, these little homes that might, not little, but the homes that may cost, 140, 150, do those start to go up to 160, 170? We've already seen in the area some homes that have been rebuilt or rehabbed in a way that they are definitely not affordable. I've seen houses that cost twice as much as my house, and I'm just kind of wondering, how does that happen? What's going on in the area? Because if you want more folks to move in or people to stay here and have that history and things like that, it has to be affordable. And I think that people forget that side of affordability and just think about other means. But yeah, so it's definitely a lot to expound on, a lot for me to learn as well as we move forward.
Thank you for that. Ron, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, thank you for that. I think that like we were talking about earlier, that balance of the development versus affordability is going to continue to be a huge issue. Yeah, so I appreciate you bringing that up again. And then just as we get ready to wrap up, if you could just talk a little bit about how folks can get in contact with you, how can they reach you, learn more about your campaign and your stances, and support your campaign if they're looking to do so.
Yeah, so they can search for Annette Nance on Facebook. And so all my links are there. And then I also have my phone number, 412-320-6912. If you have a question or anything like that, I'm always open, a call, a text, whichever. And then ananceforoffice@gmail.com to be able to, get more information or things like that. I'm always open to speaking with the community or folks and just even being able to learn, because at the end of the day, we all learn from each other.
Thank you for that. And thank you so much for joining us on the Sunday Night Sit-Down. Annette Nance, council candidate in the borough of Braddock Hills. Best of luck. Looking forward to having you back on either, later this year or, hopefully everything works out for you and we can have a conversation with the newly minted council member in Braddock Hills early in 2022. So definitely stay in touch with us. And thank you so much for joining us on the Sunday Night Sit-Down. Annette Nance, candidate for Braddock Hills Borough Council. And that was another edition of the Sunday Night Sit-Down. Again, I want to thank Annette Nance, candidate for Braddock Hills Borough Council, for joining us once again. And before we head out, Ryan, do you have any parting shots?
Not really, honestly. Just thank you, obviously, Annette, for joining us. Another really great conversation. yeah, so looking forward to continuing on with the Sunday Night Sit-Downs. Join us again tomorrow for another episode of the Power Hour, or rather, a replay of a past episode of the Power Hour. But if there's any chance you would have missed one of those past ones, tune in tomorrow to catch that replay. I'm sure it'll be. So we don't get to do replays too often, so I'm sure it'll be a really solid one that we pick for that. Yeah, just enjoy your Sunday night. Pass it off to you to give your closing shot as well.
Yeah, again, thanks so much. Yeah, make sure to check us out tomorrow night on the Power Hour, and we appreciate in advance for joining us. Look forward to bringing on more local candidates. If you're a local candidate out there, give us a shout. And you can get us at onehoodpower.org. Again, the brand new website is up, www.onehoodpower.org. You can come check us out, check out our blogs, check out latest news, information on how to get in touch with us, etc. So again, shout out the Miracle, who wasn't able to join us tonight. But shouts out to Ryan. Thank you for helping pull this together. Our producer John and the whole team that makes it happen. Thank you for joining us for another edition of Sunday Night Sit Down. This is Kahari Mosley with Ryan White signing off, and make sure to join us tomorrow night for the One Hood Power Hour. Take care and have a good night.